Hello, fellow readers and booktubers. This is my response to the Would You Rather book tag, the Curious Edition. This was created by Curious Cat and Ellen Made Books Club. I first saw the this post. It was posted. The post I saw, I just noticed it yesterday. It was from Pat at Book Chat with Pat. I'm not sure. Maybe she tagged me. Maybe not. Anyway, I saw her response first of all, and the prompts for this are so outrageously anxiety producing. This is kind of like one of those psychological exams where you're presented with two options and you must choose one, and the one you choose will negate the other one, but it will reveal something about your personality to a certain degree. It's also almost like a word association test. So I glanced through the prompts, but I didn't want to get too deeply into it because I just want to give you my spontaneous reaction to these prompts. But you're presented with two options and you must choose one. And some of these are almost impossible. So let's go with this. The first prompt: either you never read more than one book from the same author, and you can't reread either, or you read only books from one author of your choice. I think with this one, I would go with never read more than one book from the same author, because at least in that way, you can read a whole wide range of different authors, rather than just be stuck reading only one author apparently for the rest of your life. So I'd go with never read more than one book from the same author. Number two, read a book with an unlikable main character or your favorite character dies. I would go with reading a book with an unlikable main character. The assumption here, or the way I'm interpreting this one, is when they say an unlikable main character, the main character is like a villain or someone kind of creepy. Those kind of characters are always much more fascinating than a good character, or even if that character even dies. I'm thinking here of like, look at Dracula. He's a very unlikable main character. Or look at Frankenstein. The Doctor and the Monster are two unlikable characters, but boy, those books really hold your attention, don't they? So I would have to go with that. Number three, start your library from scratch, but you can't rebuy any of the books that were on your shelves before, or never be allowed to add a new book to your current library. I would go with never be allowed to add a new book to your current library. And I say that because my TBR pile is to the heights. So I've got plenty of books to get through. And if I'm never allowed to read another book, I'm pretty well stocked. So I could go with that one. Number four, your favorite author never publishes anything new or only publishes bad books from now on. I would go with the author who never publishes anything new. There's nothing quite so sad as a favorite author who starts publishing bad books, who kind of loses his or her mojo and can't write another good novel. So I would go with my favorite author gets to a certain point and never publishes anything new. I can live with that. Number five, read only one of your favorite genres, or read as widely as you want, except in that one favorite genre. This one's a little tricky. I don't know if I really have a favorite genre. I do read widely anyway, so I would go with the read widely, except in that one favorite genre. I'm trying to think what that is. I don't know if I really have one. So yeah, that choice is kind of borderline moot for me. Interesting question though. Number six, be stranded forever on a desert island with a full library, or live in a society where books have disappeared. Well, I think that's an easy one. I would stranded forever on a deserted island with a full library. If you're a reader, why would you want to live in a society where books have disappeared? And by the way, in a couple of years, that might be the case. Things are looking pretty bad for us readers. But I would definitely, on a library or on a desert island with a full library, I could absolutely live with that. Number seven, read only 5-star series, but they're unfinished, or read only thick standalones. I would go with the thick standalones. I don't read a lot of series books anyway. I like standalone books. I like the feeling that the story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, so that I can move on to new characters and new situations. Series, even if it is a 5-star series, and there's some wonderful series out there, but I used to read that kind of fiction quite a bit, but not so much anymore. I prefer a standalone, so I would go with that. Number 8, in mystery, always get book twists spoiled for you, or they all have an open ending and the killer isn't caught. I like a mystery with an open ending where the killer isn't caught, because it really gets under your skin there. It teases you a little bit. It seems more lifelike, and it can kind of haunt your dreams. When the story, if you get a book twists are spoiled, you know where it's going, and it does have an end, then the mystery isn't really so much a mystery anymore, is it? In historical romance, a great love story but with historical inaccuracies, or a toxic or meh love story but great historical world building. I'm an historian, and you might think I would go with historical romance that's very accurate in history. But in fiction, I could tolerate a great love story with some historical inaccuracies. If the historical inaccuracies are creative and interesting, I would go with that. Number 10, read a book that has the best character, plot, or writing, but none of the others. It only has one of those things. I wouldn't want to read a book with bad writing. Well, actually, I could tolerate bad writing. I could tolerate a shoddy plot, but the story has to have good characters or interesting characters. I would pick that, a book with interesting characters, and none of the rest. Number 11, have a friend who loses your books or a friend who mistreats them. I would rather have a friend who loses my books, or even if they're lying to me about it because they're afraid to give it back to me in a bad condition. Nothing sadder than to send a book out into the world and have it come back to you beaten bloody. So I'd rather have someone who just loses the books. You can always get the book again. Number 12, never be allowed to visit a bookstore again or to be banned from all the libraries in the world. I would pick never be allowed to visit a bookstore again, because the assumption there is then you could visit libraries. Yeah, I'd be okay with that, not being able to buy another book. As I said, I've got a huge pile of books to be read. And with a library, there's a constant flow of new books coming in, so I would rather not be able to buy any more books than to be shut out from the library. Number 13, everyone hates your favorite book, or everyone loves the book you hate. I think I have more experience with everyone hating a book that I love. So I'm kind of used to that. I'll go with that one. And that's like, my taste in books it can be fairly arcane. So I'm used to that. And as far as, everyone loving a book that I hate, actually, this one I could go with either one. I'm pretty indifferent to other people's opinions about what I read, or if everyone's reading a book that I don't like, I just figure, well, c'est la vie, Number 14, only listen to audiobooks narrated by the worst narrator, or only read physical books in terrible lighting. Well, I don't listen to audiobooks. I've tried. I have a hard time staying focused. But if the audiobook had a weird narrator, like Mickey Mouse is the example put here, I don't know. I think I would go with only read books, physical books in terrible lighting. Because with terrible lighting, well, I could maybe read in the daylight, go outside and read. I guess I would go with that. Because I just don't, audiobooks I have a hard time focusing. Number 15, books from the same series that don't match, or read books printed in a tiny font. I'm assuming what they mean here by books from the same series that don't match, that the physical books don't. They're not all uniform size or uniform binding or anything. Yeah, I'm much better with that. Books with tiny font, my eyesight is getting bad enough. Tiny font, I think, would just undermine any kind of joy from reading. Number 16, never post another YouTube video or never watch YouTube ever again. I'd be fine with never posting another YouTube video. That's something I'm going to address in another video coming up soon. I'm having a little booktube fatigue. I mentioned this before. So if the choice was either you could never post another one or you can never watch YouTube again, I'll pick never post another one as long as I can watch other people's opinions. I find other people's opinions a whole lot more interesting than my own. And then number 7, tag your booktube friends, and I'll include those down below. If you don't get tagged, assume that you have been. This was a challenging one and a strange one at that, but I enjoyed it very much. So that's all I've got for you today. Take care of yourselves and stay strong.